You're very confident. We will get to as many as we can, but I think we have a small group, so I think we can bang out most of this today. So my name is Jim Lanny. I'm the CEO of Intellectus 360. On the phone or on the call is also Samantha, who can really triage students. Ashley, that can help triage faculty, and Melissa, that can triage all the above or any other kind of unusual requests. And what I mean by triage is help with methodology, quant qual results, literature review, the whole gamut of services, consulting and otherwise, as well as courseware and anything else you might need. So, and I'll show that at the end as well, their contact information. But in the meantime, as Melissa just mentioned, if you have any questions about any of the anything that's being presented here, just hop onto the Q&A, and we'll get you in there. So my job really is to kind of talk about methods, quant methods and qual methods. And the general rule of thumb, okay, is that the whole idea of science is that we can replicate a study, okay? That is, we found something and we want to be able to replicate that, be it in quantitative. We found differences on emotional intelligence by gender. Great. Can we replicate that? We found themes of depression. Okay, we can replicate that in another sample. But to replicate that, we have to have the methodology clear, that someone can replicate it, replicate the methods of your study. So if they did a different methodology to test emotional intelligence, well, was the study, were the results different because of the methods that we used or because the findings were different? So you have to have the same exact methodology. So the intent at the end of the day, the intent of a clear quantitative or qualitative methodology is to precisely share with someone who does not know your study how to do your study, okay? So that's the core of it. By the way, when you're sharing about how to do your study, you don't want to add extraneous things, okay? So what I mean by that is, if we use a cookbook analogy, that I'm going to say, here are the ingredients and here are the participants and here's how I mix things together and this is how long I bake things together, okay? You don't want to be adding other things like other ingredients that have nothing to do with your study. People sometimes put like lit review stuff in the methodology. That does not help you replicate that study. That just takes up time and obscures the nature of the methodology, which is let's get to let's get to exactly how that study was conducted. So you can then compare results, right? And hopefully find similar results. So with that being said, let's just move on to quantitative methods, okay? So the bones of quantitative methods are, we come in with research questions. Great. Testable research questions. Okay. To examine those questions, we need participants, typically. Sometimes there are other observations, but typically they're participants, okay? We have a set of reliable, valid instruments, okay? All right, and then there's a procedure that we're now administering those instruments that we just described to those participants we just described. That's the core of it, okay? So you have to have those components. Let me just linger for a moment on the instruments piece, okay? Reliable, valid instruments. For all of you students out there, and perhaps faculty, for all of you students out there, okay, if you go through and you said, you know what, I want to measure whatever, self-esteem in my own way, I don't want to use the Rosenberg self-esteem scale that's been around for 60 years. Okay, I want my own. Okay, great. You get that. You get to say that. Okay, and you get to make up questions. Okay, but then when it gets to the IRB, they're going to say, okay, Bob, see that you've made your own scale. How do you know it's reliable? How do you know it's valid? And what happens is people that make their own scales wind up in a whole different path of validating their instrument, as well as using the instrument to examine the questions they want to examine. So there's enough instruments out there in the world that are reliable and valid that you should be using them, okay? Almost always, like 99.9999% of the times, okay? If you're in the instrument validating scale and you're a student, I'm going to say, why are you doing that? What do you want to graduate in 2 more years? No, okay. So you want to use reliable, valid instruments. Because when you talk about those instruments and your methodology and the IRB, you're going to cite that reliability. You're going to cite that validity, okay? That's really important. Okay? All right. So after you have collected data on the instruments from the participants via the procedure you just talked about, okay? All right. Then you have to have a data analysis plan. What does that mean? It just simply means what statistics you're going to use to apply to that data to test those research questions. For example, I'm testing emotional intelligence by males and females. Great. I'm going to use a t-test to do that. Okay. All right. Now, there's lots of other ways to do it. All right. That you could say, well, I can dichotomize emotional intelligence to high and low. That's a procedure. And see, run a chi-square between males and females and high and low emotional intelligence. That's another way of doing it. So you have to tell the reader how you're going to analyze that data. All right. Sample size. Why is sample size the sixth thing? Shouldn't that be around the participants? Okay. It's talking about a sample size of participants. Why wouldn't it be with the participants? Okay. There's 2 sample sizes in the world. Okay. One that is used for dissertations and other kind of, I'll say, journal research, and then things for like polling and things of that sort. For dissertations and for journal articles, the sample size, also called a power analysis, okay, is based on the data plan. Whether you're doing a t-test or a chi-square or whatever you're doing, okay, the sample size is based on that test. That's why it comes after. Okay. There's other kind of sample sizes, which is I want to generalize to the whole population, and I want to know how the country's going to vote in the next election. And I'm going to randomly sample 4,000 people and see how the country's going to vote. That's not what we're doing here. We're not generalizing to the world or the globe. We're going to generalize to those participants. They're all males, they're all females, they're this age range, whatever. Okay. So don't worry about trying to generalize to everybody, particularly students. Don't worry, and even faculty. Okay. When you see these studies, they get 30 people. Okay. I'm not generalizing to 330 million United States citizens. Okay. Based on 30 people. So sample size based on the data plan. Okay. All right. Where do people get stuck? Where people get stuck is right here. I'm doing this for 30 years, and people come up with questions. I'll sit you down for 10 minutes. We will develop research questions, okay? You have them in your brain. People have the questions in their brain. People know who they want to test. People can find instruments. People can figure out how am I going to administer. The data plans is the tough piece. And the data plans are simply mixing the research questions in statistical language, and we'll talk about what that means, okay? And levels of measurement of those variables. Those are the two pieces of the pie that, or the ingredients that help us figure out what statistics we're going to use. So just know that, okay? All right. So let's talk about research questions in statistical language. Let's talk about levels of measurement, okay? So there's lots of ways to ask a question. The human language is vast, all right? So, but I'm going to boil this thing down. So the most times, a lot of times, and most of the times, okay, you can really have three kind of phraseology, okay, that are relating variables to another, okay? Does variable A relate to B? Are they related? Are they correlated? Okay, related. That's language, okay? Are there differences on some variable by some other variable, okay? Does variable A predict variable B? So let's talk about the example of emotional intelligence and males and females, okay? Does variable A relate to variable B? Variable A, gender, males, females. Variable B, high and low emotional intelligence. Are they related to each other? Okay, that's one way. Are there differences on A by B? Well, that's the one we kind of been running around. Are there differences on some perhaps scale level of emotional intelligence? I give a test around emotional intelligence, and I see, are there differences on those average scores by gender? Differences. I can also say, does gender predict emotional intelligence? That is to say, males and females have an emotional intelligence score, and I can see if gender predicts that. The advantages of prediction, okay, are twofold. One is, and I'm talking about regressions here. The advantages is that the main advantage is that you can one see is that variable predictive, okay? That's one thing. But the other thing is I can now plug in a male or female that is not taken and predict their scores. That's kind of a cool thing. So knowing and having a model of gender and emotional intelligence, I can now, again, plug in this case, gender, okay, whether they're male or female, and predict their scores. That's a really good thing to do. All right. So the language part is relating or relationship, differences, and prediction. That covers lots and lots and lots of ground. For any student out there, that's covering your case, not a vast majority of the time. There are other one-offs and there's other tests, but we're going to kind of narrow our scope here. The next piece of that pie, okay, the next ingredient needs to be, what is the level of measurement of that variable? Okay, so that's a question. So level of measurement come in three varieties, okay? First one is nominal, which is Latin for name only, and nominal just simply means we're just naming things, okay? We're not ordering things, we're just labeling things. Male, female, non-binary, Republican, Democrat, Independent, okay? Or any other group, color, red, blue, green, orange, okay? We're just labeling things, that's it. There's no other hierarchy going on here. And a lot of variables like that, okay? Some of which I just mentioned. The next level has both labels and an order to it, okay? Like a horse race, okay? Horse race. First horse comes in, the next horse 2 comes in a nose later, horse 3 comes in 5 lengths later, okay? There's an order to it. They're labeled first place, second place, third place, and they're ordered first before second, second before third, but they're not equal in terms of their distance or volume or whatever in between. As I said, that first horse and second horse were one nose apart. That second horse and that third horse were several lengths apart. So there's an order, but not equal spacing in there, okay? So labels and order. The third is scale or ratio or continuous. And basically, I'll just put it as scale so I can talk about it. And it has all three components of both labels, okay? 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. Order, 1 before 2, 2 before 3, okay? And equal spaces or equal volumes in there, okay? So the distance between inch 1 and inch 2 and inch 73 and 74 are all the same distance, so to speak. So those are the three levels of measurement, okay? They're symbolized by a Venn diagram or a little bar chart or a ruler, okay? And different tests require different levels of measurement, okay? That's the importance of that. So we're not talking about differences of variables A and B, okay? Or differences on A by B, and I know the levels of measurement that helps guide me to which test it is. Okay. Now let's put those ingredients together, okay? So here we have, variable A relates to variable B. If they're both nominal, okay, nominal, male, female, high and low, okay, all right, chi-square, nominal, ordinal, chi-square, right? So basically we just have groups or a group that's ordered, okay? Ordinal, we're talking about Spearman correlations. What is the age range, age groups, say, okay, and income brackets, say, both ordinal level measurements, we can do Spearman correlations there. Ordinal scale, you're still in Spearman, scale, Pearson. What is the actual time to run a 5K? What is your actual age in years? Okay, scale, Pearson is the variable, is the test rather. And all of those would have different sample sizes, okay? Well, the chi-square would have sample sizes, okay? Spearman and Pearson. Different tests, different sample sizes. Now into the differences business, okay? Here, we can have a scale variable binominal. So let's look at emotional intelligence scores by male, female. If it has 2 levels, we're in t-test land. B has only 2 levels. B has 3 levels, male, female, non-binary, okay? All right, now we're into ANOVA land. Scale by some ordinal, also 2 levels, we're in t-test land, ANOVA. Ordinal binominal, okay? That is, low, medium, high, okay? Emotional intelligence, that's an ordinal variable. By male, female, you're doing kind of Mann-Whitney or with more levels, the Kruskal-Wallis. Okay. And then finally, the prediction kind of business, which is, variable A is predicted by variable B or B predicts A. Here, the key part is the outcome variable, also called the criterion variable in regression language, okay? So it doesn't matter what the predictors are. Predictors could be nominal or ordinal or scale, but the outcome variable, if the outcome variable is binary, okay, we're doing a binary logistic regression. If the outcome variable is several nominal levels, like blue, red, green, okay, something of this sort, okay, then you're doing a multinomial regression. If the outcome variable is ordinal regression. If it's scale, we're doing a linear regression. The word multiple linear regression just indicates that there's more than one predictor, okay, going on here. That's it. That again, that's going to cover lots of ground because you're doing chi-squares and correlations and regressions and ANOVAs and t-tests and the non-parametrics of those, the Mann-Whitney and so forth. So it covers lots of ground. All right. All right. So let me just stop, take a breath, see if folks have questions about what I just talked about, or if you have a challenging case, I'd be welcome to hear your challenging case and to talk about levels of measurement and phraseology. So maybe if someone has a question around data analysis plans, maybe raise your hand. And if you don't, that's fine too. Going once, going twice, don't be shy. Okay.
We have a hand raised.
Okay, let's unmute them and get to it.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, but you may want to speak into that microphone a little bit more though.
Okay, let me.
And what's your name?
Leah Becht, and I am a nurse anesthetist. I have my doctorate, it's a practice doctorate. So while what you're saying is familiar, it's very, very foreign at the same time. We do a lot of quality improvement
Right.
projects, and I've gotten myself into more of a mixed bag of data that I'm being told that this is more PhD, not practice, but it's directly related to practice. I just, I'm finding myself lost in the numbers of data. And I mean, even something so simple as trying to keep all of the charts straight after de-identifying the patient data. So I've been frantically taking notes on everything that you're saying and need to re-listen to it. And I basically have 3 years of patient data that are deliveries that I'm looking at that are medium to high risk for hemorrhage. That
So
also,
that's the inclusion criteria, is that correct?
yes. So the inclusion criteria would be C-section, delivery of mode of delivery, classified as medium to high hemorrhage risk.
Okay, so just for all other people too, just heads up though that so with lots of DMPs and lots of PICO-esque kinds of questions, we have a lot of stuff in there, right? And
Right.
like inclusion criteria, right? And we want to boil it down to, okay, let's get past the inclusion criteria. It's in this part of the country, it's this kind of risk, whatever. And we want to kind of just really focus on the outcome variables. What's the variable that we really care about? So let me, if I may ask you that, what is the variable of interest that you want to say,
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. That in and of itself helps. I want to look at if these patients received a specific medication.
And did all the patients receive the medication or some of them?
Some of them.
Okay, great. Okay, so you have medication, yes, no, okay.
And if they received it prophylactically, like at the time of incision or before delivery, before baby came out, and if they still hemorrhage, so if their quantitative blood losses were over 1 liter.
And so blood loss, 1 liter, yes, no. Did all of them get, for all the ones that got it, the only ones that received the med, would they have got it prophylactically? Or are we dealing with people that got the med that was not prophylactic?
Correct, the latter. So not everybody received it. This medication is currently identified in a treatment algorithm. So if you hemorrhage, then you can consider giving this medication.
Okay, so I want to understand, are there three groups, those that got the medication prophylactically, those that got the medication after they started hemorrhaging, those that did not get the medication at all? Although, do we have three groups there or no?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we have three groups. So we have a very simple issue here. You have three groups, and notice for everyone else on the call that we're just boiling down the variables. Okay, so we have one variable which is group, and there's three levels. Yes, prophylactic. Yes, after hemorrhage. No, not at all. And then we have some other outcome variable, which is blood loss 1 liter. Yes, no. It's just a very simple nominal, right? Nominal. By the way, that nominal does not have to be binary. It could have three levels like you have in the one variable of, okay? So you're just doing a simple chi-square. That's it. Okay.
Make it so simple.
This is my first rodeo, but basically that's what we're doing here, okay? So that's, but that's what you have, okay?
Thank you.
So every person that you look at, that you're looking at their chart, they're gonna be in one of 6 cells. Okay? They're gonna be in one of those three groups, and they're either gonna be in hemorrhage over 1 liter, yes or no. So every person is gonna be in one of those 6, chi-square. Okay? So I think, but for everyone else on the call, I mean, it really is getting rid of the ingredients that we're not going to need in our data analysis pie, right? Which is, and again, you're very common, okay? Which is, oh, we're dealing with this kind of inclusion criteria, okay? The medium high risk, blah, blah, okay? That's important, but not for the data plan. So we want to kind of parse that, get rid of that for the moment, and bring our brains to what are the variables? What level of measurement is it? Okay, and how many levels do we have? We have a nominal variable with 3 levels. We have another variable, blood loss 1 liter, yes, no. So that's it. So for everybody, just think clearly, try to think clearly about what for each variable, what level is it? And what type of measurement is it? And then how many levels there? Good? All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, anyone else? Okay. All right, so let's go on. So the next we have is the, by the way, let me just say one other thing to Leah, that once you have that clearly identified, I'm doing the chart review. You can talk about inclusion criteria then. I'm doing a chart, under participants. These are participants that have medium to high risk, okay? And then you're clearly telling the reader, okay, what you're doing. I have 3 groups of people. And they either have loss of 1 liter of blood, okay? Okay. And they're going to go in one of those 6 cells there, okay? All right. Okay, I'll stop there for a second. All right, let's move on to the qualitative methods, okay? Melissa, do I have any other questions though before I sally forth here?
Nope, you're okay right now.
Great. All right, so qualitative methods, just like in the quant, there were the bones of the, the participants and the data plan, and the instruments and the procedure and so forth, okay? There's also bones of the qualitative methods. Okay, what are those bones? So the research questions, typically you have questions you want to say, some phenomenological study. Hey, what is the lived experience of, refugees in Sudan, okay? So, and you may be asking, now oftentimes the research questions, contrary to the quantitative, On the qualitative, here, making up your own questions is probably more like it, okay? So typically those semi-structured interviews are going to be directly related to those research questions or those study aims, okay? Um, that would be more common, all right? The participants, they have to have, I'm not going to go to Beverly Hills to ask about the people in Sudan. They have to have the experiences of the folks of interest, okay? So goes without saying. So they have to have experience in what's happening. Oftentimes it's a semi-structured interview or observations, okay? Semi-structured just kind of means that I'm going to be asking them questions about family life or daily life or whatever, okay? And the semi-structured part is I have a set of questions, but there may be some additional questions to delve in based on what they're saying. In other words, to get a comprehensive view of their experience around some topic. Okay. All righty. So data plan, typically this involves excerpting relevant passages, okay? Combining those passages of similar excerpts, and then developing a code name and description that kind of captures the essence of those passages and some description of that. The thematizing is just another version, which is I have 30 codes, and some of those might go together, okay, into a theme. For example, okay, that you can have, lots of passages of someone saying, well, I'm not thinking as clearly as I used to. I have trouble concentrating, okay, things of this sort, okay? And you may have that as a code of, some, cognitive distraction or something of the sort. And you may have some other code around not eating and not so hungry, okay? So you may have different kind of codes around depression is what I'm going to be describing, and then some theme of depression, okay? So depression might be the theme, the codes might be the aspects of depression, not thinking well, not sleeping well, not enjoying yourself, and so, okay? And then you would have excerpts, okay, or passages that are supporting the code and ultimately the theme, okay? Sample size determinations. So it's very different from quant, okay? So the sample size determination, what people will say in literature, going to publish, faculty might say, we want you to have as many participants to get saturation, which is basically a word which is trying to say, we're not going to get any new information. We got another 30 people, it's going to repeat the same darn excerpts that support codes and themes. Nothing new is happening, okay? The other thing that's important with qualitative, I would say, is that I think that that data confidentiality is really important. Anonymizing, making it anonymous, okay? I think these are all really important things. Almost more important for someone filling out a survey online, you have 30 or 50 or however many people you have, it's difficult. Someone sharing a particular experience, particularly any kind of person that has any vulnerable aspect to them, young people, old people, incarcerated people, okay? Any of these kind of vulnerabilities, okay? Extra careful, okay? You need to be extra careful because that's being respectful of the people that are giving you their time, A, and B, IRB is going to have a very stern look at you interviewing people that have a vulnerability. or can have a potential problem thereafter. You got to talk about the ethics, the safety, and all of that kind of stuff. Is really important, okay? So I don't think we want to do this for a second, so I'm just going to move on. Well, certainly when it comes to codes and themes, having rich themes, the quality of those themes are much, much, much more important than the number of themes, okay? I'd rather have 3 to 5 or 7 great rich themes than 25 themes that like, it may not show up, it may not generalize. So certainly have the quality over quantity, okay? The other thing is that, people have to read these things or want to read these things, but don't overwhelm them, particularly at the dissertation level, with, 1,000 themes, okay, or 1,000 codes or 1,000 excerpts. Keep it manageable that people have to wrap their brains around it and then use that information, okay? We want to teach them something. Teach them something they can hold in their head, okay? Okay, so I think at that moment, I'll just kind of stop and see if there's any questions.
And if you have questions, you can either raise your hand, put them in the chat, or put them in the Q&A.
And in the meantime, what I will do is just to share very quickly that for the quant, that we have Intellectus Statistics. I'll make the shameless plug. Here we have a decision tree to also help you navigate to the different tests. And we also have a power analysis, which will help you with a sample size determination very quickly, okay? So that those 2 tools are in there, okay? The analyses, there's easy way to conduct analysis as well. Also mentioned that we also have a qualitative tool that can help you very simply code using AI, excerpt, code, and thematize. And those can be found at intellectustatistics.com. Okay, up here. Maybe we can throw that into the into the chat. Intellectus Statistics is going to help with your quantitative analysis, but also your data plans, okay, and which test. The Intellectus Qualitative is going to help with actually conducting a thematic analysis. And then I'll also say that we also have the Intellectus Lit Review. Folks on this call might well be in the methodology or coming to it. If you're still sitting into the literature review, Intellectus Lit Review will literally draft a lit review based on your 20 or 50 or 150 articles in about an hour. And all of these tools, I guess, have the same DNA of helping you scaffold how to lay things out. It's difficult to say, how would I present my results? How am I going to present my lit review? Okay, so these could be helpful tools. We are going to get to a methodology app that's next on BAT. So stay tuned for that. I will make the plug too that if obviously if you know other folks, share share both this webinar, but also share that support is around. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour, Samantha could really help with students, Ashley with faculty. That's trials, demos, support around their own research, Melissa for general questions. Here's a few of the websites. These will be consolidated in a week or two. Here's a QR code to get a free 15-minute consult. As you can see with Lee, kind of bang things out pretty quickly. Okay.
And we had Noah raise his hand, so he's unmuted.
Hi, Noah, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Doc. Thank you so much for this. My question may be twofold, but one scaffolded into one. If you're doing qualitative and you have both observations and um interviews, thematizing the interviews is quite straightforward, but I don't see the picture of like how you thematize the observations since they are sort of like in your note form.
Right. I mean, just because there's a mountain doesn't mean you have to carve faces into it. So just because there's a tool to help you,
Yeah.
just because you don't have to use. So I mean, if you just have a few pages of notes, you could try to put them into Intellectus Qualitative, but you could just do them by hand. It's okay. You don't have to use tools for that.
Okay. My
Or run
second
them
question,
separately. And,
yeah,
and
and my
you know,
second question is around
well, let
the
me just add to that one
sure.
question. So if I
Okay.
can, for other people on the call that, so we're really talking about looking holistically at your data, okay?
hmm
And what your aims are. So in your case, you have observations and interviews. Other people might have teachers and parents and administrators. You don't have to have them in the same project. You might run 3 different projects. And there's many other use cases about timing or other kinds of things that, try to think at a 10,000-foot view about what makes sense to do this, okay? That
hmm
just because you have all this data from your example, interviews and observations, my example of different stakeholders in a school system, perhaps, okay,
hmm
that you can parse them out, okay? So, okay,
Thank you.
sure.
And my Intellectus lit review question is around, does it help with the searches, or you have to do the searches and then pull screen and pull and then put them into Intellectus lit review?
So great question. So we have found there's so many discovery tools out there that we do not help with the search, but you can look at Research Rabbit or Elicit or these other ones. And then so you have to show up here with you have to show up with your PDF articles. So it's going to do a lot of heavy lifting once you have that, but you have to use the traditional methods or other tools to get to that discovery part. But we're doing something incredibly unique, which is synthesizing a ton of articles, something that cannot be done in chat, okay? And have a real good strategy of doing that. So, but you do have to show up with those with your articles.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, you are. Thanks for the question. And for those that I'm sure that's in the Q&A, but you can watch this as a really good video showing the simplicity of these things. Okay, and you can see the output of these things. You can see this is pretty extensive. Okay, and I'll just also mention, since I'm here, that there's also a gap in literature, which not only is synthesizing and describing your articles, but it's also that gap is literally the bridge between the articles and your research questions, and is justifying that process. Other questions? The discounts for students whose schools are not affiliated. So yeah, so there are for the Intellectus Statistics and Intellectus Qualitative, there are academic pricing, okay, that's compared to some kind of nonprofit or other business. For the lit review, it's LLMs get expensive, so we're kind of at a value pricing there. Okay. Final questions or thoughts? Okay. All right. Well, we will share. We will share the video. We will share upcoming webinars. Please do share these resources with other folks. you know, if anything has happened in the advent of AI, you know, we should be able to do things in a much more efficient manner. And hopefully some of these webinars and some of the tools are helping in that effort. So final thought, Melissa, do you have any final thoughts?
Nope, I think that's it. We'll get this recording out to everyone today.
Great. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Bye-bye now.